when I was in the North Island, I spent a lot of time there and went from Auckland to all these places. I'm not showing them, and then to Wellington. So Rotorua is somewhere around here. And there it is again, the two islands with the major cities. So it's about 900 miles east of Australia, across the Tasman Sea, and not so far from New Caledonia, Fiji, and Tonga. And it was one of the last islands to be settled by humans, and the Maoris were there first. During its long period of isolation, New Zealand developed a distinct biodiversity of animals, fungal, and plant life. The country's varied topography and sharp mountain peaks, such as the Southern Alps, owe much to the tectonic uplift of land and volcanic eruptions. And as you know, there was a big earthquake there in 2011, 2012, two earthquakes, lots of earthquakes, that mostly affected Christchurch, and we'll see what happened there. It's predominantly Christian, mostly Protestant, some Catholics, and also the Maoris' traditional beliefs are respected. A little Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and Sikhism. But 48% are Christians and 42% have no religion, so agnosticism and atheism are also big there. Of course, it's part of the British Commonwealth. So, Auckland, let's start with Auckland, which has a population of about the same as San Diego, and 32% of New Zealand's population lives in Auckland. Has two harbors on two separate major bodies of water. It's classified as a Beta World City. I'm not sure what that is, because of its importance in finance, commerce, media, entertainment, arts, education, and tourism. Very interesting city, lots of things going on there. Auckland is frequently ranked among the world's most livable cities. In some ratings, it's number 3, most livable city. I was there both times, actually, because of my Right to Die activities. They are have very active Right to Die groups in New Zealand, and especially in Auckland, so I spoke there several times. So this is the skyline. And I don't know about you, but when I go to a small place like New Zealand, I'm expecting a small town. And of course, Auckland is not a small town. Sorry, Norman, I'm supposed to start at 11 or 10:30, but we're not sure which, so.
Neither is he.
I think there'll be a lot of people coming at 11. I don't know what to do about it. So this tall TV tower is sort of a trademark of the city now. But a lot of the architecture looks like this, sort of turn of the century, European style architecture. And there it is at night. Very active and very pretty because of the two harbors especially. This is the stadium. I'm not sure what he's doing up there, but it's a very interesting, as Australia is very much influenced by the Aborigines, who are very different from the Maoris. New Zealand is very influenced by the Maori culture, although there's much more integration, I think, of the Maoris into New Zealand culture than there is of the Aborigines into Australian culture. But this statue reflects some influence of the Maoris, as does the names of the cities, which often are unpronounceable. Every city has an English name and a Maori name. This is the Auckland Art Gallery, very beautiful. And one of the docks, one of the downtown streets. This is very typical, this center city of Auckland, very typical, I think, of Australian and New Zealand towns. Melbourne, and you'll see Wellington and some of the other towns.
When were you there?
The first time I was there was 2005, and then some of these pictures are from 2012. So I'm not sure which is which, but in any case, they were Right to Die conferences that I was at. So, Asians are Auckland's fastest growing ethnic group, and here's lion dancers performing at the Auckland Lantern Festival. Of course, we have our lion dancers too, for Chinese New Year's, which just happened. There it is, another view of it. New Zealand and Australia are big beer drinking places. I don't know how to pronounce that. Does anybody know how to pronounce this beer? Spite? I think so. So, almost everywhere that I stopped, and I have to say I or we because some of the time in South Island I was by myself. North Island I was by myself. And then in South Island I was with my friend Portia for part of the time. In any case, we stayed mostly in hostels. Mostly YHA, youth hostels in America, or whatever it means. And they were very comfortable, very clean, very pleasant, very friendly, as hostels generally are. I like to stay in hostels. They're very friendly places, especially when you travel alone. And these were very good, and they were very well located. Even in San Diego, the location is very good. Anybody ever stay in hostels? Oh, good, okay.
Mostly with friends.
What'd you say?
Mostly with friends.
Mostly with friends. Yeah, and I usually stay there when I'm traveling alone because you meet so many nice people and it's so interesting and you're never alone. So, this is the Victorian influences in many of these cities. This is what the architecture looks like. And then the Aboriginal influences, in this case Maori. And they're usually a very beautiful cathedral and a typical street. Here I am at one of the harbors, fishing harbor. So I'm skipping several other towns like Napier. Napier, not showing any slides of Napier, but it's a Art Deco town. The architecture is Art Deco. It's very interesting. They're very proud of their Art Deco heritage, Napier, but I'm not doing that today. So this is Rotorua, which is set on Rotorua Lake in the North Island. And it has a lot of geothermal activity, so that means hot springs are bubbling up. And also, it's a center for Maori culture. I'm not going to say the name of that valley because I don't speak Maori very well. But it's a little Maori village with geothermal pools and a geyser. And a living Maori village with arts and crafts. So we'll see a little bit of that. What you're seeing here is one of the bubbling up pools. So a little bit about the Maoris. In a way, that's one of the most interesting features of New Zealand. And they're most likely descended from people from Taiwan to Melanesia, who then traveled east through the Society Islands, which is near Polynesia. So after a pause of somewhere between 70 to 265 years, a new wave of exploration led to the discovery and settlement of New Zealand. This is in 1250 AD, making New Zealand one of the most recently settled major land masses. But that was a long time before the whites ever got to New Zealand. So due to New Zealand's geographic location, 500 years before the next phase of settlement passed and the arrival of Europeans. So only then did the indigenous inhabitants need to distinguish themselves from the new arrivals, using the term which means Maori, or normal, or ordinary. They felt they were the ordinary people of New Zealand, and these other people were the new people. So about 15% of the entire New Zealand population is Maori. And about the same percentage of Maoris are active in all spheres of New Zealand culture and society, with independent representation in areas such as the media, politics, and sports. they appear to be a Caucasian race, which I think makes them more easily mixable into the general population than, for example, than the Aboriginals in Australia. So they're indigenous Polynesian people, and you often see them with tattoos on the chin, especially the women. They have their own language, their own very rich mythology about the origins of New Zealand, distinctive crafts and performing arts, and you'll see some of that. And I can show you, if I ever get to the YouTube part of this lecture, show you some Maori dancing and singing. So the early Maori formed tribal groups based on the Eastern Polynesian social customs and organization. They were big agriculturalists, and they used plants they introduced from Polynesia, and later a prominent warrior culture emerged. I'm not sure who they warred with, but they looked very warlike people. So the arrival of the Europeans to New Zealand started from the 17th century, and of course brought enormous changes to the Maori way of life. Maori people gradually adopted many aspects of Western society and culture. Initially, relations between the Maori and the Europeans were largely amicable. And you can see there's a lot of intermarriage between the Europeans and the Maori. You can see these women sort of reflect what that intermarriage would look like, but they still have tattoos on their chin. It's not that common, but especially the older people still tattoo themselves. There was a very good movie at the Palm Springs Film Festival, I can't think of the name of it, about Maori life, not a documentary, a story about Maori life in New Zealand. Very interesting because they have large families and they stick together. Families are very important. But this family in the movie split apart because the head of the family was a tyrant. And finally the children went off in their separate ways. Very interesting movie, I think what it was called. So this is a typical warrior Maori pose. The eyes wide, the tongue sticking out, and the tattoos on the face. Not a very appetizing picture. But it became sort of symbolic of New Zealand, and even the rugby players do this Maori dance, the haka, which we'll talk about later. So in the 1860s, there were rising conflicts about land between the Europeans and the Maoris. There was social upheaval, decades actually, of conflicts and epidemics of introduced diseases took a devastating toll on the Maori population, which fell dramatically at the end of the 20th century. So by the start of the 20th century, the Maori population had begun to recover, and efforts have been made to increase their standing in wider New Zealand society and achieve social justice. Traditional Maori culture has enjoyed a revival, and a protest movement emerged in the 1960s advocating for Maori issues. There's quite a beautiful Maori museum in the North Island, which I don't have pictures of here, but it's very interesting and informative.
And Asia eyes.
You can see the tattoos on the body as well as the face. So, if we have time afterwards and my YouTube is working and I can get an internet connection, there's an 8-minute video of the haka, which is their sort of war dance. And again, they are, their tongues are sticking out and their eyes are wide, and it's a very awkward looking dance, but very fierce looking dance. And it's been adopted by the New Zealand rugby team, the Blacks. And they do the haka before every game. You know, what must scare their opponents to death. So there it is, traditional war cry dance or challenge from the Maori people. It's a posture dance that they all have their arms akimbo and their legs wide. And it has vigorous movements, stamping of the feet, and shouting accompaniment, so it's very scary. The war haka was performed by warriors before a battle, proclaiming their strength and prowess in order to intimidate the opposition. But haka are also performed for various reasons, for welcoming distinguished guests, or to acknowledge great achievements, occasions, or funerals and weddings, And Haka performance groups are very common in schools. So it's, in a way, it's a New Zealand performance art because a lot of New Zealanders, Europeans, have adopted the Haka. This is the eyes wide open thing, the tattoos. So there are approximately 600,000 people who identify as Maori in New Zealand, about 15% of the national population. In addition, about 120,000 Maoris live in Australia, which is something I didn't know.
Mhm.
And about a fifth of all Maori still speak the Maori language. It's being taught in some schools, so it's about 3% of the total population speak Maori. And, you know, as the Aborigines are, it's a very good tourist attraction. So the government sort of fosters Maori culture as the Australian government fosters Aboriginal culture, but the Maoris are much more integrated into New Zealand than the Aborigines are, I think. So a large percentage, disproportionate numbers of Maori face significant economic and social obstacles with lower life expectancies and incomes compared with other New Zealand ethnic groups. They suffer higher levels of crime, health problems, and educational underachievement. Socioeconomic initiatives have been implemented aimed at closing the gap between the Maori and other New Zealanders. And I can't say just Europeans now because New Zealand's become not a center, not a haven, but a lot of immigration from neighboring cultures has occurred in New Zealand, much more than it used to be. So you get ethnic food, Chinese, Japanese, of course Asian culture is very big there. Plus the islanders have come. So it's not just the Europeans and the Maoris, it's a lot of other cultures which make New Zealand quite interesting now, different than it used to be. And they're also talking about political redress for historic social grievances as we talk about redress for the blacks, which hasn't happened here exactly. Our blacks, not the New Zealand rugby team, which is also called the Blacks. You can get, when I went there, I bought these like stocking things that you can put on your arms or legs with the tattoos on them. So you can make yourself look like a Maori almost instantly. I don't know what I did with those things. Here's the tongue.
Intimidated as it is just part of our culture. Now last but not least, it's the Tamuka engraved on the female's shin or the Tamuka engraved on the male's face. It's symbolic to our ancestors performing with us and a ranking of what tribe you come from or a ranking of how high you are in your tribe. Ladies and gentlemen, girls, thank you for taking the time to watch my fashion show. Kia ora.
There was a little Maori show in Christchurch, injected in here. Oh, my finger. Sorry about that. So much for that show. There's a little bit of the Maori language. Anybody proficient in Maori? As you can see, the arts are very big there. Beautiful materials and designs. He looks pretty fearsome, doesn't he? They're pretty big people. Of course, they're Polynesian, so that would suggest they're big.
Haka, H-A-K-A. Being translated, well, H-A is ha. Ha is your breath. Without it, you do not live. And K-A is the food. I don't mean it's the fire, just to add a couple more legs. No, I mean like the food when you go for a walk, a run. a job, a laugh, like an energy kind of.
Sorry, my video capabilities are zero here. He was trying to explain the word haka. So back to Rotorua. This is the Maori village. And here's the geothermal springs that are there. You can boil an egg right there. I think that's what she's doing there, boiling eggs. And it's the only living geothermal Maori village. It has geothermal vents all over, which gives it a life-giving energy resource and heat and steam. It was sort of cold when I was there, so it was also warm. You can see the boiling hot pools and bubbling mud, learn how the residents utilize and respect the ever-changing forces under the land. So that brings us to Wellington, the capital of New Zealand. Have you, everybody's been to Wellington, who's been to New Zealand? It's a charming town, I like it very much. I had a meeting there. The port there can develop some very fierce winds and overturn boats. So this Wahine was one of those boats that was overturned, and I think the Wahine is at the bottom of the harbor and still in the ocean. But it's famous for its shipwrecks there. It was very mellow when I was there. You can see sort of the Victorian influence and also the Maori influence. And this is the part that's on the land. So today, the ethnic makeup of the New Zealand population is undergoing a process of change, with new ways of immigration, higher birth rates, and increasing interracial marriage, resulting in the New Zealand population of Maori, Asian, Pacific Islander, and multiracial descent growing at a higher rate than those of solely European descent, with such groups projected to make up a larger portion of population in the future. So of course, that gives us a lot of very wonderful ethnic restaurants, including this one, the Indian restaurant. But that made Wellington very interesting to me anyway.
That's really very mixed.
That's all,
And here you can go if you want to be a nanny. You didn't know they had a college, did you? I just want to show you that the New Zealanders are very with it, and here's a lady with high heels. But this is more typical of a street. This is a street in Wellington, of course. It looks cold, but people are still eating out of doors. Still, the influence of Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland is very prominent, and European architecture too. A lot of hippie-looking kids hanging around. So this is the hostel I stayed in Wellington. And there you can see it's at the bottom of North Island. And you can also see in the terrain there, the topography is shows the volcanic activity of the land. So it makes it very interesting to travel through. And quite differences in climates depending on how high or how low you are there. And you'll see that more in the South Island. So we took a ship to South Island, took about 3 hours, very comfortable. And South Island is one of the larger of the two major islands, bordered to the south by Cook Straits, to the west by the Tasman Sea, and to the south and east by the Pacific Ocean. It's about 58,000 square miles, and it has a temperate climate, although some of the time we were pretty cold. It has a 32% larger landmass than the North Island, but only 23% of New Zealand's 4.7 million inhabitants live there. I think I've given you 3 estimates now of how many people live in New Zealand. So we'll try 4.7 million. I don't know what's right. This is in Queenstown. So people are bungee jumping from the helicopter. Can you see that? A lot of that goes on in New Zealand. Bungee jumping from bridges and high buildings and all sorts of things. I didn't do any of that. That is not me at the end of the road. So you can see, although the North Island and the South Island are discrete land masses, within South Island are all these other islands. So from the boat, we took a train that went down to, I can't remember where we stopped, but I have a couple of cities here that we saw along the way, not necessarily in that chronological order. That's my friend Portia. So that is, you can take a train. I may have done that, I can't remember now. All the way down here. And then you can get a bus, which is what we did. All the way down to Dunedin was my last stop. Portia had left, I think. And that was our ferry. So it's very easy to get around. And you can see that people had to build on these mountainous places. And they also had the ocean, because the ocean is everywhere in these little islands. Whale watching there was. And so when you're seeing green pasture land and cows, you're also seeing glaciers and snow-capped mountains. It makes it very interesting. Notice that they're all free-ranging cattle. So when you eat meat in New Zealand, of course you eat a lot of lamb, but this is cows. Those are much better fed cows than our cows tend to eat, God knows what, hormones and everything. Very pretty terrain. And wine growing regions. Not as much as in Australia, but still they have their own wine. These are not good pictures of sheep, but of course sheep are everywhere. But I'm taking the pictures from the bus, so. And the coast. Rugged coast, but there's also beaches. So at some point our train stopped and suddenly we were in snow. We were really surprised. And it was cold. And it just went from green lands to snow, because we were pretty high at that point. Real snow. And this little bird, the Kia, was there. And there can be avalanches up there. Meanwhile, there's the ocean and the pasture lands. This guy had this shirt on. It's only illegal if you get caught, which was an interesting little way to live. I've got a lot of these pictures of very beautiful terrain in New Zealand, but you get tired of them after a while. It's beautiful. So the next stop here is Christchurch. And what do you know about Christchurch? Earthquakes, right?
And the takeoff for the Arctic.
And what?
And the departure area for the Antarctic.
That's true. See, New Zealand is very far south, and the departure area for the Antarctic, right? Did you depart there from the Antarctic?
I don't go to cold places.
No, I don't either. But when you do that, they give you all the equipment you need, all the clothes and the layers and everything else, if you're going to spend some time in Antarctica, which I had contemplated at one time. So this would have been the departure area, probably. So there were 4,558 earthquakes recorded in the Canterbury region, which is where Christchurch is. above a magnitude 3.0 from September 2010 to September 2014. And I was there in 2012. So Christchurch had just had its first, not just had its first earthquake when I was there in Christchurch, and before the second earthquake, which was pretty devastating. So it became a city in 1856. It was the first city in New Zealand, and the Gothic Revival buildings date from this period. And a lot of beautiful architecture there. The earthquakes did a lot of widespread damage across Christchurch, resulting in loss of homes, major buildings, and infrastructure. Actually, liquefaction occurs where the materials for the buildings actually melt. And that was across the eastern suburbs. It's estimated that the insurers would cost the insurers $20 to $30 billion to rebuild Christchurch. I don't think there were many fatalities, though, and the second earthquake produced more fatalities. The Avon River runs through the center of the city with a beautiful park around its banks. And this is the cathedral before the partial earthquake in 2011. You would think you were in Europe with a cathedral like this. It's really quite a small town. But this is an example of this commercial building after the February earthquake, which was 2012. Yeah. But the first one was September 4th, 2010, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake, which struck the city and the central region. But it was 4:35 in the morning, so there weren't many people around. It was mostly west of the city, caused widespread damage, minor injury, no fatalities. But then 6 months later, February 2011, so I was there somewhere in between, I guess, a second earthquake, 6.3, struck the city at 12:51 p.m., so right in the middle of the day, and located closer to the city. Although lower on magnitude scale than the previous earthquake, the intensity and violence of the ground shaking was measured to be a 9, which is violent, among the strongest ever recorded globally in an urban area. And that did result in 185 people killed. Thank goodness I was not there then. But you can see how it affected buildings. Whether they're building now more earthquake-proof buildings or what, I'm not sure. Another one, February 2011. It's really sad. It's a very peaceful, quiet, pretty town. Here's what it looks like. So it's the largest city in the South Island. And it lies on the South Island's east coast, home to 39,000 people, that's all. It's a very small place. But it's the third most populous urban area next to Auckland and Wellington. And it was named by the Canterbury Association, which settled the surrounding province of Canterbury. It's a very British feel to it. And there's a very nice tram. It takes you around the town. This was up on the wall somewhere. Oh, we discovered this little movie theater. Very pretty little place. It's one of these small streets that are so charming. It's a big hotel, which we did not stay. And there's the cathedral. That part of it was intact when we were there. I'm not sure who that is. But that's the park around the Avon River. When I was there, the Diwali festival, the Indian festival, was going on in the park. I don't know where the slides are of that, but it was made. The park was all lit up, and had a lot of Indian food stands in it. It was very pleasant, and it's got a relatively big Indian influence in terms of number of restaurants and the fact that they would have this festival there. Here's the Avon River. And the rhododendron were blooming beautiful alongside the palm trees. Little influence of the Maori carvings. This is a stadium, not sure what this is, not a stadium. So it was one of the days we were there was a Saturday market, which you see all over, actually, all over Australia and New Zealand, these little markets where craftspeople exhibit, and there's food, ethnic food and otherwise. It was very pleasant. The singer, busker, I guess she would be called. All kinds of interesting things to buy. And again, you can see the influence of the immigration to New Zealand. And this is a very nice Maori arts gallery. It's beautiful. There's a big similarity between this kind of sculpture and the Inuits in Alaska.
Everything is so round. Everything is so round.
They have sort of totem poles that they carve. And this very pretty carving over the gate. Buskers entertaining people. It's a very tolerant culture. Hippies are tolerated, gays are tolerated, people from other religions are tolerated. Tolerated is not a good word, but welcomed, I think. So this is what the first earthquake ruins look like. What is this? It's not the art gallery. Maybe it is. Yeah, I guess it is. The Christchurch Art Gallery. Translated into Maori on top. That's what it looks like. Very impressive, eh? It's a very good view of downtown, mostly before the earthquake. Or maybe I took it, I'm not sure. Wow, that's after the second earthquake. So, kiwis, the next 5 kilometers, and 3 kinds of kiwis. A common nickname for people from New Zealand, still I don't know why. And the kiwi bird, which you just saw, the flightless nocturnal bird, native only to New Zealand. And they're tough to run into in the wild, but easy to meet at the zoo. I don't know if you remember the picture I showed. We took a cruise around Indonesia, and there was this little bird stowing away on our balcony, and I'm pretty sure he was a kiwi. He couldn't fly off the railing, but he did slide under the doors and disappeared. So I think he was a stowaway from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And then there's the kiwi fruit, the sweet little round fruit, green on the inside, brown and furry on the outside. When you hear people say kiwi, they're usually talking about the people or the bird. If you're looking for the fruit, you need to ask for kiwi fruit. So this is their All Blacks rugby team, which they love. And they open their games with the haka. And you can see how fearsome they look. That's the posture, the teeth, the grin, not a grin, the eyes usually wide open, the tongue out. So our next stop was, I'm not sure if this is chronologically correct, but the Franz Josef Glacier, which is a beautiful 12-kilometer long temperate maritime glacier located in this park on the west coast of New Zealand's South Island. It's 39,000 feet long. This is our little hostel. The nice thing about YHA hostels is you can book one from any other hostel that you're in, so you always know you can have a room at the next stop. We didn't always know which stops we were stopping in, but once we knew, we could book our room. And there's the inside of our room. Very nice, clean, colorful. And you see out there is not the kind of vegetation you would expect to see in a glacier. But there was actually a rainforest there with rainforest kind of vegetation and then the glacier. So you had these changes in temperature a lot in these islands. There's the glacier. And my picture is not there. We just looked at it, but we didn't climb up it. But you need really good equipment, ice equipment, to climb this glacier.
What month? Do you remember what month you were there?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was July, but no, that wouldn't have been right because then it would have been very cold.
Doesn't
Can't
really
remember.
matter.
Huh?
It really doesn't matter. It's glacier year round.
Well, it's a temperate climate for one. But it would matter, I think, because down under, it gets very cold in our summer.
Mhm.
That's not me either. But that's how it looks near the glacier. Okay, so from there, or maybe before then, I can't remember, we went to Milford Sound, the very famous place. It's very beautiful, in the southwest of New Zealand's South Island.
Tourist trap.
Tourist trap, yes. It's a World Heritage Site. It's been judged as the world's top travel destination in an international survey and is acclaimed as New Zealand's most famous tourist destination. Tourist trap, yes. Rudyard Kipling called it the eighth wonder of the world, which is very nice, but it's also one of the most rainy places in the world. So, you get on a boat and you go around, and you can see the clouds gathering behind the boat, and people wearing their rain gear. This is the inside of the boat, which was nice and warm and cozy. But outside was not. It was raining and foggy and cold. But this is what you see, these beautiful waterfalls and scenery. Seals. Could see that much, but this is how foggy it was, and raining and cold. So sometimes you don't see very much. So you can see how rainy it was. That's the rain of my camera, or the window, I guess. But that's how it would be. If you go to Google and Google Milford Sound, you see these beautiful pictures, but it doesn't always happen. So here is the truth, is Milford Sound is known as the wettest inhabited place in New Zealand, and one of the wettest in the world. So your chances of having a dry, nice, clear day when you go to Milford Sound are very low, actually. Okay, so then we're back to the sheep again. New Zealand has 4 million people, somewhere plus or minus a million there, and 60 million sheep. And it's very cute. Whatever season of the year that was, it was the season for lambs. So they were all over the place. And they were actually adorable, the lambs frolicking. Tasted good too. The nice part of it is you can see beautiful green grazing land and beautiful mountains, and some of them are snow-capped, and glaciers too. And it's very undensely populated, so there's lots and lots of room there. This is one of the buses we took to go from place to place. And whatever season that was, it must have been their spring, so it must have been, I think, October maybe. Here's another national park with fjords. And it's part of the Commonwealth, and so the Queen's presence is sort of ubiquitous there. And when she comes to New Zealand, she gets quite a enthusiastic reception. And there's a lot of residual British culture in New Zealand, but a lot of beautiful nature. There's the contrast between high mountains and cold and a rainforest. There's a bus like we had. Queenstown is another big tourist attraction. It's because I think it's where you stop for Milford Sound, and it's on Lake Wakatipu. And that's the Southern Alps that you see in the background. So it has a lot of adventure sports and a base for exploring the region's vineyards and mining towns, and lots of bungee jumping, jet boating, and skiing. So it's an outdoor person's paradise there. This is the main street there. Tucking into the food.
Cold.
Cold. Lambs. Not real ones, but very cute.
Yeah.
Kiwi. Queenstown is a nice stop. Lots of things to do. Good food. Somebody who likes sheep. Fancy shops here. And wine country. This is a strange place with these fruit on top. A lot of tea rooms. We stopped actually on the bus in a lot of little towns. And they were very cute with a lot of little tea rooms and British type food. Weaving. This is one of the little towns. Apparently, there were Anzac forces in our battle in Afghanistan, and this is this man who circled is a New Zealander doctor who fought in Afghanistan.
What was he trying to achieve? What was he trying to achieve?
Here's a little New Zealander. Looks like a little Brit, doesn't it?
Doesn't look real.
And there's all this sort of whimsy, orgasmic, organic ice cream, virgin vanilla, chocolate climax, strawberry seduction, kinky caramel. There's a whimsical sense of humor that you see also in Australia, but very big in New Zealand. Lots of churches, although church attendance is not a big thing there. And the statue of a whaler. So, New Zealand, I think was the last stop that I remember. And it's all the way at the bottom, and it was quite cold. It's at the head of Otago Harbour on the South Island southeast coast, known for its Scottish and Maori heritage. So interesting how they blend so well. Victorian and Edwardian architecture and a large student population. Very good university in Dunedin, by the way. And a good law school. I got to meet one of the law school faculty there. Hiking and cycling trails crisscross the dramatic landscape of the adjoining Otago Peninsula, home to colonies of albatross, sea lions, and rare yellow-eyed penguins. It's a very interesting place because its proximity to wildlife and the coast, And also, because it's so far south, it's almost close to Antarctica. It's pretty close. So there it is. Typical house there. This is the famous train station. It's a magnificent piece of architecture. I have a few more slides of that. It's one of the best pieces of architecture that I remember seeing in New Zealand. Beautiful. This is a hostel that I stayed in. Very pleasant. I guess that's what it was. And these are some downtown pictures. There must have been some festival going on there because there are hardly that many people in Dunedin at all.
Beautiful. Here we go, Scots.
I don't want to mix up my right to die stuff with this travel stuff, but I went there. I didn't. There was a young scientist there who came to help his mother as she was dying from cancer. His mother was a physician, lived in Dunedin. This young man was born in Dunedin, Sean Davison, but he went back, living in South Africa now, went back there because his mother was dying. And she decided to stop eating, but not to stop drinking. Anyway, it took her a long, long time to die. And she asked him for help, and he gave her morphine. She had plenty of morphine around, and she died. And he wrote a book about it. Beautiful book. And because of what he said in the book, he was prosecuted by the Dunedin authorities even while he was in Cape Town. Had to go back and be tried, and he was sentenced to 6 months house arrest in Dunedin. So I was sort of curious. I knew about him by that time, and I was sort of curious to see what Dunedin was. And it's a very interesting little city. I later had contact with the law school there who was very interested in his case. And he has since become, this is totally sidetracked here, since become, well, when he went back to Cape Town, he had the support of Archbishop Tutu, Bishop Tutu now, I guess, who has made several public statements in support of assisted dying and in support of Sean. And Sean has since become the head of Dignity South Africa, which is a very significant and active Right to Die organization. And also, Sean has now succeeded me as president of the World Federation of Right to Die Societies. So it's sort of interesting that Dunedin is the origin of all this, that activity. But here you see bagpipers. So you can see there is a Dunedin, of course, in Scotland. And you can see that they very much embrace the heritage. And it was raining and cold some of the time. There are 2 Cadbury chocolate factories, both of which I visited. One is in Tasmania, and one is in Dunedin. And now they're threatening to close it, and the town is up in arms about this. But it was my first stop because it was cold and rainy out, and I thought a chocolate factory would be right up my alley, which it was, very pleasant. Oh, I do have more pictures of the chocolate factory. But this is another downtown hostel. I tend to stay at the YHA hostels because it's an international network, and you can count on them being very nice, clean, and then you can make your reservations in advance. And they're very nice. I'm sure this backpacker's place was fine too. But this, you can see this architecture that looks very European, turn of the century-ish. You could go into the bar. These are other places you could go from Dunedin. And this is the Cadbury factory. I didn't make a booking, but I didn't have any problem getting in. This is tons of chocolate here. Get a lot of free samples. A lot of exhibits inside. John Cadbury, a name that should be revered in history because the candy's really good.
Inspire Hershey.
Better than Hershey's.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I would put Hershey's actually at the bottom, but
Anything
my
better
opinion.
than Hershey's.
Hershey is on.
This is how they're made. And this is the store where you can get a very good price on chocolate, which I did. This is their chocolate truck. Back to the train station again. This is the interior of the train station. It's really amazing. Some of the delights that you can eat in New Zealand that they had at the train station. It's quite good, actually. The cathedral. It was cold and rainy, as I said, so I was there a few days. And I found this great movie house downtown. This is so elaborate. And I saw a nice American movie. This is the ladies' room. This is the kind of bathroom they don't have in North Carolina, I guess. And this is where the men go. This is the kind of Rams, I don't know if it's a ram or what, but in the bar. And this is how they refer to New Zealand. I refer to it, and especially to Dunedin, a place on a corner in the middle of a city at the bottom of the world.
Hmm.
So this is a picture of Mount Cook. And here's what somebody said. As the planet heats up environmentally and politically, it's good to know that New Zealand exists. This uncrowded, green, peaceful, and accepting country is the ultimate escape.